ॐ जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः. So we were discussing the conversation with Surendra at Jairam Bhatti, and in our previous talk, the previous class, we discussed that Surendra is asking Holy Mother that there are a lot of problems in his life. So, so Holy Mother consoles him and tells him that you don't worry, Sri Ram Krishna is there, he will protect you. And also we discussed that very often it is pain or sorrow that takes us nearer to God than pleasure or happiness. When we are happy and full of pleasures, busy with our pleasures, busy with the toys of the world, then Sri Ramakrishna says, and then Holy Mother says, we don't tend to remember God and don't try to feel His presence. Only when we really feel that we need God to help us tide over our difficulties, then we try to feel His presence, try to pray to Him, and that takes us nearer towards God. Swami Vivekananda also in his talks used to say that pain teaches more than pleasure. That is what I found in my own life. So from his own experience, if you see Swami Vivekananda's own life, the amount of suffering and the amount of trouble, tribulations and other things, it did not prevent him from having faith in Sri Ramakrishna. Again and again he went to him, tried to test him, and complained to him and expected some kind of help from him. But somehow he did not stop loving Sri Ramakrishna. His guru or the amount of faith he had in the redeeming power of Sri Ramakrishna, because he saw with his own eyes that though he did not get any temporary worldly benefit from the company of Sri Ramakrishna or uh, through his grace, he knew that some kind of conviction, faith in the presence of the divinity within, and the faith that that divinity was always with him, whether he was in India as a wandering monk or also in America. In fact, when he was in America and he was suffering from a lot of tribulations, a lot of attack from the Christian missionaries and other people, he was for a moment shaken, because coming to a foreign country and facing so many tribulations and losing all his money, whatever money the Madras disciples and the Maharaja of Khetri had given him, that money was exhausted because he had to spend a lot to maintain himself in the early days, because before he became famous in Chicago. After that, the doors opened to him. But before that, Swami Vivekananda was facing a lot of tribulations and trials. And perhaps he thought Sri Ramakrishna was testing him. And sometimes he became so panicky that he even thought of writing to Alasinga Perumal and said that I have very few dollars left. Whatever you had given me has been exhausted. And at this rate, I can't continue. Perhaps I have to I have to come back to India without even fulfilling my master's mission. So for a moment, seems to have lost a little faith. But then through unexpected quarters, help came. And then he writes, when Alasinga had finally decided to collect some money, he was a little upset because he said, uh, I came here without any preparations, without any letter of introduction, and I am in such a precarious position here. Nobody is helping me. In fact, some of the people who were supposed to help him were in fact creating a lot of trouble for him out of jealousy. His own countrymen, some of his own countrymen, the former Brahmo followers, colleagues of his, like Pratap Chandra Mazumdar and all. So they were out of jealousy, they were creating problems for him rather than help him. And he found the Theosophical Society and others who initially thought of patronizing him and said that if you join us, then we will help you. There was so much of conditional help they offered, which Swamiji, of course, would definitely he refused. So those were testing times for Swami Vivekananda in the early days of, but his faith was shaken and he even thought of coming back to India, or at least he told Alasinga that he's planning to come back, and uh, he told him that I may not be able to continue like this. I finished all my money and it's so expensive to live here. So either please send some money so that I can continue, or if you can't do that, then I'll come back. And then immediately help came, and Alasinga did not have to send money. Immediately wrote a very nice letter. He said, it was this Sri Krishna, my Ishta, my Guru, who protected me when when he was when I was wandering for 3 years, when he wandered, when he left Baranagar Mutt, left the monastery, the first monastery which they had formed in 1890, until 93 July, he was wandering all over India, trying to find out what his mission in life was, and what was Sri Krishna, what was the instruction of Sri Krishna, what was Sri Krishna's instruction for him, and trying to search for more and more spiritual experiences. He even left his Guru Bhais from Delhi. Then he thought that is a bondage. So he wanted to be alone and find out what exactly was his mission in life. Then passing through Western India, he goes to Kanyakumari, and of course, the rest you know what happened. How he came across so many princes, Ajit Singh Ji, and somehow they managed to convince him to go to the West, where he would be heard and where the wonderful message of Sri Krishna would be appreciated. So, but still there was so much doubt in his mind, and many times he planned and even waited for Holy Mother's approval or Holy Mother's support or Holy Mother's permission to go, though he had a clear vision asking Sri Krishna asking him to go to the West. So he says those 3 years, in spite of so much of suffering, I never lost faith in Sri Krishna. Many times he was tested. When he went to Banaras, when he went to Brindavan, on the way in the forest, he was going there as a wandering monk. Sometimes he would not get food for several days. So many times he tried to test, and every time Thakur Sri Krishna somehow came, even though he had to suffer a lot. And once or twice, even because of ill health, he thought of learning some Hatha Yoga from Pavari Baba. But he he had a vision of Sri Krishna with tearful eyes, saying that, do you don't I mean asking him not to follow that path, because he was not meant for that. And Sri Krishna was protecting him in various ways, though he was testing him, and Swamiji also was testing him. Many times he used to deliberately not eat anything and say that if you are there, you arrange for some food for me, and somehow miraculously something would come. So that faith, 3 years he was protected. Swamiji writes in a very touching and moving letter. He tells Alasinga, don't send money. There was a little bit of weakness in me which made me panicky, and I asked for help. But I was how unfaithful of me to my Guru. When my Guru had promised me, he had helped me all through my difficult days in India, in deserts, in rainforests, in forests, in jungles, in mountain tops. Everywhere he was with me. His presence was with me. His protection was with me. And now coming to this strange country, how strange that I lost faith. He says, If the Sri Krishna, if he could protect me there, can he not protect me in this country? So with that, those words, he reiterated that his faith in Sri Krishna has increased all the more the way certain problems were solved, but not that he was without any problems. People tried to poison him. Sri Krishna came and told him, don't take that cup of coffee. So he threw it. Like that, so many other incidents happened. They carried out a campaign against him, trying to create doubts in the minds of, after his success in the Chicago Parliament, people got jealous, and some of his own countrymen, some of his own colleagues, Brahmo Samaj colleagues, uh, conspired with the missionaries to say that he did not belong to a higher caste and he was a man of uh, ill repute, and many things they wrote against him in the newspapers. And for a moment he thought, why have I come to this country? This country is, leave alone supporting him. There were so many problems, but somehow or the other, some of the disciples would always come and stand by him. Some sincere disciples would always be with him and who never gave him up. And he says he was especially the Hale family who first hosted him, first saved him. Actually, he was sitting outside hungry, having lost the address to the Parliament of Religions, the office of the Parliament, the letter also, introduction letter. But somehow this Mrs. Hale, who just saw him sitting hungry and invited him to her house. And later on, of course, he stayed with the lions, and they were they were his official hosts. And after that, all the doors of good people, noble people, with whom he made wonderful friends, Mary Hale, who became a lifelong, the whole Hale family was so devoted to Swami Vivekananda. So everything was arranged by Sri Krishna. And then when he wrote this letter to Alasinga, he said, imagine, for a moment I became weak, my mind became weak, and I lost faith in Sri Krishna, my Guru, my Ishta, my all in all. And and still, the one who protected me in India several times when I was very close to death, will he not protect me in this country? So he rebuked himself and told Alasinga not to send any money. And then, of course, things were, but one thing has to be noted, even when he was in India, when he lost his father and he was suffering from a lot of tribulations, hunger, no job, and all those things. Even then, Sri Krishna, though he did not solve the problems the way he wanted, but he said, your parents, your family will not suffer for want of basic food. So, recently we heard a very senior devotee who is in the late 90s, saying, telling her experiences about her spiritual life. So she said very clearly, when we asked her, do you feel the presence of Sri Krishna? In what way do you feel her presence? Someone of who were accompanying us asked her, how do you feel after she came to Sri Krishna at a old age of 60, a rather advanced age by all standards, but now being 97, almost 40 years after she first came to Sri Krishna Vedanta Center, we asked her what type of presence you feel. How does Sri Krishna, what place Sri Krishna has in your life? I mean, what we actually wanted to know from her, have you got some spiritual experiences, some visions which will enable you? So the answer she gave was wonderful. She said, I don't know what presence I feel, but one thing is sure, that I don't feel in my life that things should go this way or that way. Whatever happens, happens by His will. And I take it, I feel a lot of peace having this particular attitude. So it is a very significant statement. As Holy Mother says here, you just have to be desireless. You should not expect things to happen this particular way. Then it is a kind of barter. We try to negotiate with God that I'll pray to you, you make such things happen in my life. If it happens this way, then I will have continue to have faith. If it doesn't happen. But this uh, devotee said very casually, but see the amount of faith and resignation she has in the grace of Thakur, that she says, I never thought after coming to Sri Ramakrishna, one great thing has happened. I don't know what kind of presence I feel, but I know he is always there to protect me. And I at least do not expect things to go this way or the other way, that way. It really doesn't matter to me now. And as a result of that, for the last 40 years or so, 37 years, I found peace which I never had in the first 60 years of my life. So this is a very significant statement from somebody who was devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, who affirms the fact that faith in God doesn't mean, that is, most of the people think that faith in God or praying to God or worshipping Him or even taking initiation and other things, praying and offering certain things, we expect that our life will be smooth. Our life will go in a particular way which we have planned. And we go on planning. Our planning is so fragile. We don't know that things may not go according to our plans. But still we try to stick to our plans. We are adamant and we insist on God helping us in our particularly chosen path, not knowing whether it is good or bad for us. We don't have faith that whatever happens, happens by the will of Sri Ramakrishna. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Ramer Ichha. Yeah, there is a wonderful story. It's good to discuss this because here mother is telling Surendra the same thing. Of course, she is not telling this story, but Sri Ramakrishna said one person was so straightforward that he always used to say Ramer Ichha, whatever happens in his life. So, good or bad. And he went to the extent of even depending so much on God that even when he was jailed, for example, some burglars came and he was walking, passing by, and some burglars had robbed a house and they were taking away all the valuables. When this person was a devotee of Lord Rama, was passing by. So then suddenly they saw that police is coming. So they simply asked him to carry that, whatever they had stolen, and they ran away. They knew that if we carry whatever we have stolen, we'll be caught. So in a hurry, they just gave it to him, and this poor fellow did not know. He just was carrying, and suddenly the owners came out, and the police caught him, and he was taken to jail. And then he was asked. Then he said, "See, I don't know. I was just walking by the will of Rama, Ramericha. By the will of Rama, I was walking. By the will of Rama, those robbers came and stole certain things from that house, and they were coming out. And by the will of Rama, they just put those things in my hand. And by the will of Rama, the police came and they escaped, and I was caught. And by the will of Rama, now I am before you, O magistrate." He was before a magistrate. They were giving him a chance to defend himself. How could you be found with stolen goods and not be guilty? So he was trying to explain. And in his very simple way, he said, it was the will of Rama that all these things happened. And then by the will of Rama, the police caught me, and by the will of Rama, they have produced me. Here I am. This is my whole story. Seeing the innocence and seeing the faith, the judge was moved and then asked. They said he is innocent. The robbers are somebody else. He was uh, not. He was left off. Seeing the guileless faith and the wonderful devotion of this person, they thought, how can he steal? And he is openly telling everything. And when he was finally released, when others asked him what happened, he said, by the will of Rama, I am released. I've been, the judge has pardoned me. So when good things happen, also he said it is the will of Rama, Ramericha. And when unpleasant things happen, so to take things, allow things, and not decide what should happen. That means we take the position of a creator. We call God the creator, the dispenser of all the karma, and the destroyer. And then we want to tell him or ask him to do certain things in a particular way, which we feel, which our little ego, the puny little ego, thinks that things should happen this way or that way. And when it doesn't happen, we lose faith. We lose faith in our Ishta, we lose faith in God, we lose faith in our Guru, we lose faith in many things. So here Holy Mother says that by His grace everything will be all right. When she says that, that doesn't mean that things will go your way. She never meant that. Here, when she's telling Surendra that things may or may not go your way, but ultimately He is there and He will protect you always. He will watch over you here and hereafter. Don't fear, my child, she says. The master will look after you. He will watch over you here and hereafter. He will protect you always. So, getting that assurance, after the meal, the two devotees took leave, Surendra and the other person, not the Suren Mitra, it was Surendra Bhaumik. So, he was a headmaster of a school at Bal Ratan Ganj nearby. So, after that, Holy Mother went. She had that habit, whenever devotees left her, she felt very sad. So she used to go to the end of the village, Jairambati. Of course, Jairambati was a very small village at that time, but still she would accompany them and just wave them and look there, looked on till they were out of sight. She walked part of the way, at least till the end of the village, and then kept on looking and waving to them till they were out of sight. When they were out of sight, she used to return. So much love and concern she had for her devotees and especially her disciples. So this Surendra, who was the headmaster of a school at Bal Ratan Ganj, in that school, a very strange incident happened. So Holy Mother shows that sometimes you land in trouble without any bad intention. That is what happened. So this example Ras Bihari Maharaj is giving here, that Surendra was the headmaster and some butchers of that place used to flay cows alive. There were some butchers. First of all, Hindus don't like the cows to be killed, but in those days when the British government was there, people from other religion used to uh, uh, kill these cows and they used to even eat. So, but they had a very cruel way of killing these cows and they used to kill them alive, which is very, very painful. They used to flay them alive. And the rogues, the butchers, they did it in front of the school where a lot of children uh, were exposed to this act. And it was so unbearable. And Surendra, who was one of the teachers in that school, protested. And when they protested, he and the other teachers and the students, both Hindus and Muslims alike, not that only Hindus were beaten up, there were other Muslims who did not like this. They made a strong protest, said, don't do it in front of our school. You are openly, they scolded the butchers and they protested. But when they protested, they were angry. The butchers were beaten. Of course, some trouble was created. So the whole crowd gathered and some people came and beat those butchers also because they were doing this very cruel act. So they suspected that it was Surendra who had brought these people to beat them. So later on, the butchers again came back and he was threatened by the butchers. At this time, 2 or 3 students of the school were preparing to leave for Jairambati for taking Diksha. So Surendra would recommend some good boys to go and take Diksha from Holy Mother. So they were about to go for initiation. Surendra sent a letter to Holy Mother through them. Then these boys who had come for initiation, they said he had not told Holy Mother about the problems that he faced. He did not want to disturb her, but these boys came and told that has been threatened because he stopped them from killing cows in the open in front of the school before young children. Holy Mother was terribly alarmed. She was extremely shocked and said, if you don't protest against such an action, then who will do so? He did the right thing. According to her instruction, a letter was written to Surendra giving him assurance. She said, you take this letter that what you have done is the right thing, don't worry, and gave him a lot of encouragement, supporting his act, saying that you did the right thing. If nobody else protested out of fear, that is not good. You have protested and you have done the right thing, and gave him a lot of assurance and protection. Further, he was asked to see that a repetition of such cruel action did not take place. He also not only asked him, encouraged him, and gave him assurance, but told her in future also see that such things don't happen. You have to be strong. Later on, mother again wrote to Surendra. She wrote another letter after some time. First, she supported his action, and he said, don't be afraid, the master is there to protect you. If God really exists, she wrote something very significant. She says, don't worry, if God really exists, then he shall certainly redress this grievance, this act which is being done, and their butchers are threatening you, but you see, God is there. If he really exists, then he should solve this problem. This kind of cruelty should not happen. Sometime later, as things happened, a lawsuit was filed, and as a result, the government took action, and the whole butchery of this kind was totally banned in the whole of Bengal, I mean, in that area. So this problem was solved by the iron hand of the administration. So Holy Mother's blessings and Holy Mother's assurance given to Surendra to stand up for all the evil that is going on was supported. So the next conversation is 11 June 1913, which was held at Jairam Bhatti. It was noon. Along with another, I was taking food on the veranda of mother's room. Mother says, Radhu says that this time in the month of Ashwin, in that particular month, Radhu had some strange intuition. Sometimes she used to uh, say certain things, though she was mentally not in a good frame of mind. Sometimes she used to intuitively say something. So she says, in the month of Ashwin, I have heard that there will be fierce fighting, Maramari. In Bengali, the two words Mahamari and Maramari, they are similar. They're similar. I mean, she did not know the difference between the two, Radhu. So the disciple who was there, I mean, this disciple would have been Ras Bihari Maharaj, he said, no Maramari, but Mahamari. This is the month when epidemics happen. So Mahamari means epidemic, Maramari means fierce fighting. So in the almanac, I mean, those who believe in the Panjika, the almanac, it was written that this age, this particular time of Ashwin in this year, there will be a big epidemic. So there are certain forecasts. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But the disciple is telling Radhu that no, it is not Maramari, but it is Mahamari is anticipated. So some kind of epidemic, pandemic may happen. In the course of conversation, the Holy Mother said, Holy Mother didn't reply to this at all. She just kept quiet. And then Holy Mother said, Satya Yuga has begun since the birth of the Master. So this was said by Sri Ramakrishna, by Swami Vivekananda also, that the Satya Yuga, Kali has ended, not in the literal sense. Satya Yuga means people will be holding on, if those who can hold on to truth in this Satya Yuga and just hold on to truth, then spiritual life will be very easy. You don't have to do a lot of austerities or tapasya. Satya Kalite Satya Satya hi tapasya. Satya alone, truth alone, speaking the truth in mentally, physically, and by word, by speech, by action, and by thought. If one is truthful, that alone is tapasya. Because in this yoga, it is so difficult to always speak the truth, literal truth. But at the same time, Holy Mother also said, truth should be spoken, but not harsh truth. Harsh truth should never be spoken. She was so compassionate. She says, you should not ask a lame man, how did he become lame? It may be a truthful statement, and You may say that I'm just speaking the truth, but there are certain truths which should not be spoken. It is better to keep quiet. But at the same time, she said, Satya Yuga has begun since the birth of the master. Many luminaries have accompanied him. And then she says, Naren was the chief among the seven sages, Saptarshi, the seven sages who are renowned for their austerity, for their tapasya, for their renunciation, for their power of meditation, and they were in a subtle body, in a subtle sphere, doing tapasya for ages, not being disturbed by the slightest, no connection with the world. Even Sri Krishna says he had a vision where he saw the Saptarishis. They had even transcended the devas, the lesser gods, and they were sitting there in deep meditation for ages. So you can imagine what a dhyana siddha avastha they were. They were so much used to meditation. That's why when Swami Vivekananda was born, right from childhood he had a vision and where he used to see a light before going to sleep. Meditation was natural to him. He was known as a dhyana siddha. So Naren was the chief. These are Holy Mother's words. He says Naren was the chief among the seven sages. The Sapta Rishis are there, whom Sri Ramakrishna saw in a vision, and he saw himself as a small child asking Naren to come down for the benefit of humanity, to share his experiences and to save humanity. So, out of seven rishis, he was one of the rishis and he agreed to come. So then she says, Arjuna came as Yogin. He who was Arjuna in the previous birth, as I have mentioned it many times. Even Sri Krishna said, he is Arjuna reborn. But if you see his life, especially Yoganandaji's life, compared to Swami Vivekananda, he did not exhibit the least amount of rajas which he exhibited in the previous birth. In the previous birth, he was a warrior, he was always active, and Sri Krishna was goading him to work, and he was a fighter par excellence, but at the same time a great devotee, friend of Krishna. So, but in this life, he has come with Sri Krishna and played a totally different role. Perhaps the experiences of the previous birth, the previous incarnation, it's not a birth for them, they were not jivas, they were all great luminaries who come only when incarnations come. They are the antaranga, the inner circle of devotees. So Arjuna must have come, this is my interpretation, that having seen the futility of the battle, of power, of wealth, of a married life, where he married and lost his only son, Abhimanyu. So he lost his son, he lost all the Pandavas, in fact, lost their son. So all these experiences, that is why Swami Vivekananda says, people who get Vairagya in this life would have had experienced a lot of sorrow, or maybe a lot of power, pomp, and at the same time sorrow. They would have collected, nobody would have been more powerful than Arjuna in the previous birth. He was capable of defeating everybody single-handed. There was so much of outer glory, outer strength, which gross strength, which we appreciate. We appreciate people when they are very strong, they are powerful, they dominate, and we appreciate such personalities. But if you see in spiritual life, in the next birth, having enjoyed all that and having suffered also, because you don't get enjoyment without suffering. He had all the power, he won a victory, but at what cost? He lost all his sons. So ultimately, the world teaches you certain lessons which come handy when you are born again. You are disgusted with that kind of glory, that kind of power, that kind of enjoyment which you have finished. So they say, before you become monks or before you become renunciates in this birth, that shows that in the previous birth you would have become a king. So he says, only kings and powerful people, when they reach the height of their power, they find the futility of losing everything. And then in the next birth, they can hope to be people who are totally dispassionate about the world. And that is what happened. So Arjuna came as Yogin, and in this life we see at least Swami Vivekananda was a bit active. of course, forced by his master to preach all over the world. When he tried to force Yogen to do it, he simply refused. He said, I have seen enough of that. He was always seen meditating, and he lived a quiet life and passed away first, even before Swami Vivekananda passed away in 1901. He was one of the first disciples to finish the Leela. But at the same time, you will find he was the first disciple of Holy Mother. Though he was considered to be a direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna did not give him Diksha. But after his passing away, one day Yogananda had a dream where he said, Yogen, go to Holy Mother, or go to Ma and take Diksha. And Ma had a similar dream, Sri Ramakrishna instructing her to give Diksha. So he got the grace of Holy Mother, being one of the first disciples of Holy Mother. So he used to do tapasya, and the only work he did very sincerely was serving Holy Mother. He was always serving her. Whatever little money he got, whatever little help he could do, he served. So after the passing away of Holy Mother, there was a big gap because Swami Shardananji was in America, or he was busy. So as the General Secretary, so it had Swami Trigunatīthananda for some time took upon this task of serving Holy Mother. But unfortunately, he also went to the West, built that wonderful Hindu temple, first Hindu temple of the West in San Francisco, and he died there. So after that, the third person to serve Holy Mother was Swami Shardananji, who by that time had gone back from the West to become the General Secretary and was there. So he built the house for Mother at Udbodhan, and till the end of her life, her Mahasamadhi, till her Mahasamadhi, it was Swami Shardananda, Shardananji, who served her and looked after all her comforts. So she was the third sevak. But the first one was Swami Yogananda, who after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, after his Mahasamadhi, when Holy Mother had no place to stay. So she was just going from one place to another, staying in some pilgrimage places. She was grief stricken. So it was Yogananda was always accompanying her, uh, looking after her physical welfare and seeing that she did not have any difficulty while she was traveling. And everywhere Swami Yogananda went with her. He was not only Yogananda was not only Mother's first disciple, was her first sevak as well. And he did that job. That was the only desire in his life. After that, he was so dispassionate. When he came back to the mutt, you could hardly find him doing any activity. He was full of vairagya, so much dispassionate. And Swami Vivekananda also appreciated, because he wanted some monks to be at the monastery and show what a highly and totally silent meditative life is. So there was so much of variety in the direct disciples. Brahmananda, though he was very quiet and he never talked trivial things, but he had to be the administrator. Even while Swami Vivekananda was alive, became the president and had to be very active. But they could not force Swami Yogananda to take part in any activity. He looked totally silent, totally aloof, and that is why Holy Mother loved him very much. And when he died, she said, first brick has come down, now the whole building will collapse. She knew all the direct disciples will slowly start finishing their Leela. So she says, how many such great souls can there be? She says only a few great souls, many luminaries came with Sri Ramakrishna, because Satya Yoga has started. That's why you find such glorious people, glorious monks who were Arjuna in the previous birth. One was a Saptarishi. Then we saw Niranjanananda was a companion of Sri Ramachandra. So many things Sri Ramakrishna has said in the previous birth. They were with incarnation. So naturally they have come as helpers in the divine Leela. Then she says, sour mangoes can be had without number. Now this is a metaphor. Sour mangoes doesn't mean, she says, but Fajli, a certain variety of mangoes. Can one get so many? So she says, naturally, the mangoes that you find in the market, a lot of them are sour, but there are few sweet mangoes. So Naren and Yogen and all these uh, inner circle devotees, they were like these fazli mangoes, the rare variety which is sweet. So we can't get these varieties of mangoes in large numbers. So countless ordinary people take birth and die, but only these jewels among men come along with incarnation for the sake of his mission. So whenever Sri Ramakrishna comes, whenever the incarnation comes, Sri Ramakrishna came and the Holy Mother said, Satya Yuga, we call it a Satya Yuga because so many luminaries came with him. And as soon as he went away, slowly they all followed him. So disciple says, Swamiji also said that with the advent of the master, Satya Yuga has begun. Mother says, yes, exactly, that is so. So now we come to the next day, a conversation which was held on the 12th June 1913 in Jairamati. At noon, the Holy Mother was feeding Radhu. On one side, she was giving advice, she was giving initiation, she was looking after uh, the disciples' spiritual welfare, but on the other side, she was doing certain very trivial tasks which a normal, simple housewife would be doing, a householder would be doing totally attached. And perhaps that was part of the divine plan, that if she had not done this, she would not have stayed on this earth for a long time. 34 years after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother stayed on this earth and guided countless people. And one of the reasons was this Radhu. She says Radhu is Yog Maya. She has taken up a body and creating all sorts of problems for me so that my mind is concentrated on the worldly things. I mean, the troublesome things. If there is no trouble, Holy Mother would have gone into Samadhi. So it was the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, or the divine will, that somebody like Radhu could help to keep Holy Mother's mind on a lower plane, so that she will be able to serve a lot of devotees and be beneficial. So for 34 years, she served non-stop, except for the last few months when she was very sick before her Mahasamadhi. She just stopped. She totally detached herself from Radhu. So while coaxing her to eat, it was so difficult for Holy Mother, whole day, half of her day, with all the other duties she did, giving diksha, giving initiation, feeding devotees. She had to look after uh, this Radhu. So she used to coax her to eat because she would not eat. She was so, her temperament was so unstable that sometimes she will eat, sometimes then she will fall sick. So she is telling, while coaxing her to eat, said, when the master was ill, Ganga Prasad Sen of Kumar Tuli was consulted. Ganga Prasad Sen was a famous Ayurvedic physician. So he was consulted. The physician prescribed some medicine, forbade him to drink water. So one of the conditions was that if medicine will be effective if you don't take water directly. The master began to ask, and Sri Ramakrishna had the nature of a child. Thakur had the nature of a child. So when some medicine was prescribed, he found it. Is it possible? He began to ask everybody. This doctor has told me not to drink water, like a child listening to somebody who is prohibited him from drinking water. He started asking all around him, will I be able to live without water? How can I stay without water? He asked this question of everyone, even of a 5-year-old child, anybody who is coming, as if he is his companion. He said, I have been asked to not to take water along with this medicine, but can I live without water? All replied, yes, sir, of course you can. Can I? He asked me. He asked Holy Mother, can I live? Of course, I replied. He then said, you should wipe the water from even washed pomegranate seeds. So he was given indirectly, of course, he was consuming a little water. When you eat pomegranate seeds, there's a lot of water inside, but if they are washed, less direct water goes to his mouth. They used to wipe it with a cloth and give him dry pomegranate seeds. See if you can do it. In reply, I said to him, well, everything will be done by the grace of. But Sri Krishna, he asked everybody, but then finally he said, if the grace of Kali, Mother Kali is there, I can do anything. We shall try our utmost. The master made up his mind at last. First he complained and asked everybody and anybody, can I live without taking water? So he stopped drinking water and took the medicines. Then Holy Mother thought of a nice trick. She thought that he is now not taking water directly. So let me give him more milk. He can't take water, but he can definitely take milk. So to increase the quantity of milk, which he would not do, she used to give him 3 or 4 seers of milk to drink, all normally for the whole day. But later on, she increased to 5 or 6 seers. It's uh, a quantity in Bengal of those days. This seer is not the seer of the Western India. One seer means it is quite a lot, but the seer in one seer of milk is half that of the West. That is what I came to know. So anyway, the man who milked the temple cows used to give me milk in large quantities. So milk was available, and mother used to go on. He would say to me, if I give all this milk to the temple, the priest will take it home after worship and give it away to anyone and everyone. So Sri Krishna was so conscious of the fact that Rani Rasmani's money, the money which is used for the seva of Ma Kali, and the food that comes should go to the right people. If the food doesn't go to the right people and is eaten by men of loose character, because the priest would give it to their relatives and then misuse it. So he was worried that Rani Rasmani's hard-earned money with which he built the whole temple and arranged for the prasad and all those things, that should not go waste. So he used to take that and feed it. All the milk used to come, whatever they allotted, it used to come to Sri Ramakrishna, and then he used to give it to his disciples who were spiritual people, at least thinking that their seva would satisfy the purpose with which Holy Rani Rasmani very generously built this whole temple and left such a huge estate for its maintenance. So he used to give, that milkman used to, that's why I obey Sri Ramakrishna. He was a good person and he used to give 5 or 6 years of milk. So Holy Mother used to in exchange give him some of the rasgullas and sandesh and all sweets which Sri Ramakrishna used to distribute among the disciples. The devotees used to bring plenty of this and mother used to give it in exchange of the milk, because she was keen that the master should drink all this milk. So what she used to do, knowing fully well that he won't take so much milk, she used to go on heating it till the quantity got reduced, and 3 or 4 seers of milk she would reduce to 1.5 and then feed Sri Ramakrishna throughout the day. And when Sri Ramakrishna asked her, how much milk is there? She used to say, how much indeed? Maybe for 4 or 5 quarters of a seer. She did not even say that there were 3 seers. She said it's less than 1 seer, because that was the quantity she had reduced it to. But the actual essence, the milk would have been more. Only it was the water content was removed. And then he would remark, perhaps there is more milk in this. He suspected, because he was feeling so heavy after taking that milk. He said, I'm taking the regular quantity, but how come I feel so heavy? One day Golap was there. So he asked her, he was doubting that why is Holy Mother, after drinking I feel so heavy. He asked her how much milk is there, and she told the truth. She told Holy Mother reduces it and then gives it to you. She didn't know, she could not hide anything. So much milk, he said, four seers, and you reduce it to 1 seer, condense it, and that condensed milk I'm taking. Then he says, oh, I see, that's why I get indigestion. Then he gets angry on Holy Mother, says, call her. And Holy Mother came in and he told me of what Golab said about the milk. I pacified him. Mother had to pacify him. Oh, Golab does not know the measurement. How can she know how much the pot? So Holy Mother had to tell untruth. That's why she used to say, if it is for a good purpose, even if you say some casual untruth, it is okay. Then she she said, no, it is not. You just go on drinking. Don't know. She doesn't know how much the pot contains. It is I who do that. So you don't worry and just. Then Thakur was convinced because he believed in Holy Mother. Another day, he again asked Golab. He was doubtful that perhaps I'm getting more quantity of milk, and that is why my indigestion is there. So one full bowl from here and another from the Kali. She told the truth, how much of milk was. Again, Kulapma did not know how to tell lies. So she said, and then the master got nervous. Again, he called Holy Mother and said, what is the exact capacity of the bowl? How much milk is there? And how much are you making me drink? Then Holy Mother very carefully and very quietly, avoiding the question, she said, I don't know all those calculations. You will drink the milk which I give you. Why these inquiries about measurement? Just don't bother and just drink whatever I give you. I mean, she just wanted to avoid this conversation so that Sri Ramakrishna would not know the secret of how many liters of milk, seers of milk was there. Then he said, can I digest all this milk? I shall get indigestion. And really, because he was a man of truth, you see, when he said something, it would happen. So everybody was afraid. And because Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he said something, he was so much devoted to truth that even casually, if he said, I will come, he would go there. Even if he had no business to go, he would go, just say, I have come, and then come back. Once or twice he had said that I will come to meet you. And when he went there, the door was closed. But he loudly shouted that I have come. And then he came back to Dakshineshwar. Even if he knew that it was too late and the person would not entertain him, still he went because he had given a word that I will come to your house. So he went to his house and came back. So, like that, when he said, I will have indigestion, and immediately that day he had indigestion, and he did not take anything that night except a little sago water. So he really suffered. And then Golab said to me afterwards, well, mother, you should have told me about it before. How could I know his own evening meal is spoiled? When she was so straightforward that Golab said, if you had told me not to tell the exact quantity, then he would not have worried and he could have quietly taken it, since he knew he had this indigestion. In reply, I said to her, there is no harm in telling a lie for feeding someone. In this way, I coax him to eat. That is what Holy Mother said. Sometimes when you are dealing with patients, even if it is necessary, you can even tell a lie. So that is why Holy Mother said, I don't have any other intentions. I just want him to eat, otherwise he will not eat. Anyway, he picked up his health as a result of Holy Mother's action, and he was cured of his illness. Then Holy Mother, then the disciple says something wonderful. He says, I see that the mind alone is everything. That means what the disciple is saying is that if the mind thinks it is bad for you, it will be bad. As long as Sri Ramakrishna did not know, or Holy Mother did not tell him how much milk was there, he was all right. He never suffered from indigestion. But the moment somebody told him the truth, so the mind impacts our health. If we think we are sick, we will really become sick. It will induce the sickness in us. So psychosomatic diseases, they say, if you constantly keep on worrying, that happens. So Sri Ramakrishna's case, it was really proved that the moment he came to know that there was more milk, but afterwards when Holy Mother told him, no, it is she doesn't know anything, then he was cured. The same milk, he was taking the same milk, but the mental attitude determines the health. That was shown by Sri Ramakrishna. And disciple says, see, the mind alone is everything. So that is the importance of the mind. We can make ourselves sick, we can make ourselves healthy, but that requires a very strong mind, a determined mind to decide that this is the condition of my body and I will see. Just as Thakur decided. The doctor told him you have to somehow stop drinking milk or stop drinking water directly, because otherwise this medicine will not work. And then when he did it, he used his willpower to do it. So mother says, exactly, it is the mind alone. Indeed, when he was not told, he would consume that milk quietly and nothing would happen to his health. At night, Vibhuti and I were taking food. I said to Vibhuti, would it not be good to get Radhu an amulet for hysteria from a dependable person? Now, this is another topic. We will discuss about it in the next class. The time is almost over. It is about the temple of Dharma, which was there in Jairambati. They say it was a Buddhist temple because Buddhists, when they were spreading in Bengal, they used to call their god Dharma. They worship Dharma. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. The holy order started by Buddha. I take refuge in that holy order. I take refuge in Dharma. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam. Buddha means the enlightened one, not just Gautam Buddha. He says, take shelter in the Buddhi or the state of Buddha. Take shelter in Buddhi, surrender to Buddhi, surrender to the Sangha, which encapsulates the teachings of Buddha, and then Dharmam, the Dharma of Buddha. So slowly, when the Buddhists went away, this Dharma, which was worshipped by Buddhists symbolically, was given a new name, and the temple was known as Dharma's temple. So we'll discuss about that. Then Holy Mother shed some light how this god, which is later on known as Swarupa Narayana. So when Hindus took over the temple, they converted that, but still he was known as Dharma. So Hinduism has the capacity to absorb all the different gods and goddesses and ideas of uh, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, which were offshoots from our own religion. So we will discuss about that in the next class. So if there is some question, I will just see the chat. Yeah. Yes. The question is, first, uh, somebody somebody has written, I hope you are having a lovely day. Of course, today it was a nice day, though I had a class at 2 p.m., 2 to 3, 4:30, 3:30. It went up to 4 o'clock. So I got some rest and now I am fine. Now, yesterday I was a bit tired, of course, you might have observed. So that is, now I'm okay. Now the question is, why and how some in Brahmo Samaj made Vivekananda's life miserable? Can this not be prevented in a divine, powerful way, because Shardama can envisage before the incident arrives? Now, this is a question, typical question, which everybody asks. But one has to understand, as I told you, the today's theme was like that. These people, they could have easily prevented it. They could have used their powers to prevent, but that is not why they come. That is the whole problem with all the devotees. We devotees think, why should trouble come? If trouble comes, then God is useless. I believe in, say, Krishna or say Rama. I go to some temple and I expect that all my troubles will be solved by God. So we have a business type of relationship with God. That is what most of the devotees, in fact, they even asked, if Vivekananda was such a great person, if he was a Saptarishi, why did he fall sick? Why did he have diabetes? Why did he have so many diseases? There was a book written by one Shankar, uh, Achina Vivekananda. Though his idea was to show the human side of Vivekananda, he did a lot of disservice by writing that Vivekananda had 40 diseases. He had this problem, he had that problem. There was another disciple in the West who wrote about how few marks Swami Vivekananda got in some subjects. He got very less marks. So they try to reduce these great people, great prophets, and try to show that physically they were vulnerable. But what does it mean? What does it mean to them? Sri Ramakrishna had cancer. He died of cancer. Could he not save himself? He said, many of the devotees told Sri Ramakrishna, why don't you cure? Why don't you tell the Divine Mother? He says, if I want, I went to ask her. Then he said, are you not eating through all these people? What kind of Vedanta you follow then? If you think the body is everything, if you think all the sufferings which people give you, if you think that is real, and if you are so gross and go to God to solve those gross problems, then you are not really worshipping God. So that is why this Brahmo Samaj people, whoever it was, not that all were jealous of him, some of them created problems, but that was also divine wish. Why did his father die, you may ask? Why did he have to suffer? He suffered from hunger. He did not get a job. Does that mean Vivekananda was not great and Sri Ramakrishna did not love him? In fact, Swamiji says, nobody loved me. Even my own parents did not love me as much as Sri Ramakrishna did. But apparently you may ask, so what did Sri Ramakrishna do? He could have prevented his father from dying. Holy Mother could have helped him when he was struggling both in India and in America. Did they not? No, they could have prevented it. Because they can envisage before the incident took, definitely, but there is a certain purpose in the divine incarnation. If they don't show us the way, if they don't suffer, they suffer for us. We don't realize this. And every one of us are incarnations in a different way. People learn lessons from when we see somebody struggling. When I told about that devotee, after 60 years, I told, I do not want to name that devotee, but 37 years, she suffered all her life. And after 60, she says, my life, I learned one great lesson, not to expect God to just come and solve my problem, just to solve my stomach ache and all. For all these small things, I can go to the doctor, I can get medicines. I don't want God to help me with that. But if I get a conviction that God alone is true, then that is real religion. So these small setbacks, these small problems. In fact, Swami Vivekananda did not even live up to 40, but that doesn't change his greatness. The amount of work he did in his 39 years and 6 months of life, perhaps we don't do it in 80 years. We may live up to 90, but we may not be able to do even a fraction of what he did. So it really did not matter what difficulties he faced. In spite of that, his spirit was strong. And Sri Ramakrishna also, he died of cancer. If he had lived, he lived for 49 years. But that was enough to train disciples and start a big movement. So Holy Mother herself lived for 34 years. So much of suffering. Radhu, her own family, her brothers gave her trouble for the sake of money. It was just like any other household where people quarrel for money. So why was that done? Why did it happen in their lives? Just to show that if in this world, this is how the world goes on. Brothers don't care for sisters, sisters don't care for brothers. It is our own self-interest. The selfishness is dominating every human relationship. To show that even the incarnations have to suffer, so they don't bother. They don't bother about all their problems. Swami Vivekananda had to face so many problems in India as well as in the West. There were people who were criticized. His own friends, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar, who was a Brahmo, who was a very good friend. They used to come to Sri Ramakrishna. What happened to him when he went to abroad, when he saw Vivekananda had become a hero there, everybody praised him. He felt jealous because his importance was lost. So he tried to criticize such a great scholar, a Brahmo devotee. Why did it happen? You may say that could Holy Mother not prevent it? Holy Mother knew, even Sri Ramakrishna perhaps knew. But because of that, because of some other people also who created trouble, and Swamiji's wonderful heart, he never criticized them. He just tolerated all these things. And that made him stronger. The more opposition he had, the more spirituality he developed. So these setbacks may appear setbacks to a person who is attached to the world, but to a spiritual person, these difficulties are not difficulties. That's why Kunti told Krishna, I don't want you to solve my problems. She saw her sons were sent to forest, the grandsons died. Kunti saw it all. So many things happened in her life. Not once did she tell Krishna that you solve my problems. He said, I don't care. You give me as much trouble. I don't care, because I know world is false. This world is a temporary place. I don't want to get attached to this world and die like an attached person, like animals do, like other. I don't want the gross world. I want the spiritual development to take place. So this has nothing to do. One has to remember very clear that following God or following God in the right sense of the term doesn't ensure that troubles will not come. But one thing is there, in spite of the troubles, you will be able to keep your mind steady. So that's why Mother says mind is everything. So if the mind is steady, if nothing can disturb you, that is the ideal spiritual condition, not the condition where everything is going on fine, everything is smooth, as if God has no other business than solve our property problems, our quarrels in our house. We will quarrel and ask God to come and help us. These things never happen in the life of a spiritual devotee. They will have all the problems, and because they have problems, we should not conclude that they are not spiritual. So I told about the devotee just now. In spite of problems, she still is living for 97 years and has no regrets. You ask her, she suffered from so many problems, but if you ask her, she said, I didn't expect anything from Sri Ramakrishna. I never wanted things to go my way. Either way, I was happy. I was content, and there was more peace in my life in the last 37. It's something significant to learn, that a life without any expectation, a life totally dependent on the Lord, that is our goal. So that is I hope I have answered your question. That is what we should all try to attain in our own life. Okay, so I take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. There is a small question. I'll try to answer this. Not expecting too much from the secular world is the goal. Yes, yes. In a way, that is a goal. It has been rightly put that if we expect too much from the gross and the secular world, then we will get stuck to it and will be born again and again. That is the essence of spirituality. So, if we expect, the more we expect, the more worldly we become, the less spiritual we will be. So that is not the goal, and that is not what at least Sri Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda tells us. And they showed it by their own life. They didn't just preach. They showed how to live a life with all the difficulties. They never prayed. Even Thakur could have easily prayed and used his powers to cure himself. He said, no, I can't do it because it is a worthless thing. I may cure myself and live for 5 years more, but what will I gain? I have reached, touched the spirit, I have joy, I have the spiritual attainment, which I did before I fell sick. I mean, that is the goal of life, to not to be disturbed. And he was not disturbed by his disease. That is the goal, to keep the body fit, as Swami Vivekananda said. It is good to keep the body fit and in trim and fit, but it is better to endure everything and be joyful throughout, whether the body is fit or not, whether the body is good or bad. If you have a continuous sense of joy, peace and bliss, that is the goal, not temporary joys and temporary relief from all these things. Okay. Okay, but we have to, and we need financial security and have to work very hard. Yeah, we get bound. No, it is not necessary that if we work for financial security, most of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, they were dependent on somebody or the other, whether it is for a job, whether they had a job. Even Master Mashay, till the end, he had a job. He was a schoolmaster and he had to work very hard. In the midst of his work, there was so much of pressure of teaching children and his own pressure in his own home. So, but Sri Ramakrishna told him to continue what he did. And he did not apparently solve the problems when he was alive, but at the same time, he gave him the power. A person who was about to give up because of the difficulties, he slowly, in the same situation, got a lot of peace of mind by by writing the gospel, by meditating on Sri Ramakrishna's message. So, for financial security, even M had to work. So it doesn't bind you. Working for financial security, working for greed, for more and more things, more and more positions, not being satisfied with whatever God gives you for the amount of work that we do. No doubt it is hard work, but at least you are happy that you are not, a person has not worked hard just to accumulate money, but just to see that there is some financial security to bank upon when you become old. Beyond that, even Sri Ramakrishna did not encourage people to go after wealth and all those things. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste.
Namaskar. Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste.